back to A Well-Designed Business. My name is Luann Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. My guest today is Delyse Berry, owner of Upstate Down, an interior design studio and real estate brokerage firm. Before I begin the show, I want to remind you that 2024 is around the corner, like you need reminding, right? For the new year, you've probably been putting a lot of thought into your business goals and what you need to do in order to reach those goals. Maybe you've realized that the business foundations that you have could use some reinforcement. But maybe you're wondering, how do I get the help? Do you do it yourself? Do you spend time and money and resources researching? Do you use trial and error to figure out what works and doesn't? Or maybe should you cut to the chase and get the help and targeted advice you need from someone who has done it successfully and can give you the blueprint of how and what to do? Your time is valuable and you don't have to recreate the wheel. Join me on January 10th so we can work on your A Well-Designed Business together, setting you up for success in 2024. Register now for my brand new 4-hour intensive, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, the workshop. And in 4 hours, you'll change the trajectory of your business. Don't miss out on this class. It's only being offered one time this year. This is your opportunity to take it. Okay? And of course, it would not be the holidays without a little gift. Buy a course for the January Luann University semester, any of the 5-week courses, and use holiday at checkout to get $300 off your entire cart total. Okay, this applies to the 5-week courses only, which start the week of January 30th. All right, now, Delyse, before becoming a designer, was in real estate. Her success in real estate was attributed to the framework she created that made her stand out from her competition. From this success, she learned to translate from her real estate process to her design process. And this resulted in a very long wait list for her design services. She has a retail business with a high demand and also still manages to run the brokerage business. Delyse is here to tell you what so many of her colleagues ask her. How did you grow so fast in a new industry? I mean, in just under 3 years. So let's find out how Delyse did it. Hi, Delyse. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I feel like I'm going to tiger by the tail here because everybody that comes on the show, first of all, that they know, they have the expectation that I want to talk about the business end. Obviously, that's very well branded. And that I appreciate a good conversation about productive processes and systems, but I don't often get this sentence, which I love, which is the execution process is as important as the end result. And I'm like, hallelujah, on my knees, like, bowing to you, because it's what I say all the time. I think every garden variety consumer expects when they work with an interior designer that the outcome is going to be beautiful. But they also expect that the process is going to be beautiful as well. And the truth is that a beautiful outcome does not make up for a crappy process, ever in my book. And it sounds like you agree with me, Delyse.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. And the bottom line is there's so many details and logistics that go in to a well executed process and finished result. And it comes with a lot of bumps and bruises. And that's why they hire us, right? They want the end result, but we have to be the formula of how to get there. And we have to pick what part of that is forward facing, what part of that is insulated, and how we're going to execute it properly. So I totally agree.
Well, and I love the way you just said that. I've used the phrase front of house, back of house, but I love that nuance there. What part of our process is forward facing and what part of our process is insulated? That is so insightful because we talk about all the time. We have our 10 steps that we tell our clients. These are the 10 steps, but each step internally has 30, 40 steps in order to execute what the client sees as step 2, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, when we're formulating our business and each file based on what our clients need, we go through an entire workflow for just that, right? What is going to be shared with the client every step of the way, and really wanting them to feel a part of the process, but not overwhelm them, and ensuring that we're really taking care of the details of the business on the inside. And that's all inward facing. So, I'm sure we'll get into it, but just really making sure you have that execution both for your team, yourself, and for your client as integrated pillars, but that all operate independently is really important.
And so, how do you go about doing that for your business, Delise? In other words, do you run off of Asana or Monday or Trello or Google Docs? Like, what processes and where do you document all the different things so that all the dominoes fall when they're supposed to?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, and it's always sort of an ebb and flow. I feel like we're always trying to improve our systems in order to make it more streamlined for us and more just clearer for the client based on what we're going to share with them. We do use Monday. I think it's a great option. We use Google Docs. We use spreadsheets. We have obviously our design softwares that allow us to track different things. But one of the things that has been really helpful for us in this process is different designers build differently and they execute their planning differently. For us, we have found it to be really successful for the client and for us to bill by the hour actually, rather than
Mm.
by the project or percentage based. And so we actually create spreadsheets for every file that outlines hours spent, products with tracking, construction costs. And so what happens is we have spreadsheets that are internal, but we have spreadsheets that are client facing, and the client can go on daily if they want. They can see how many hours was spent on their file, what was done, what was ordered, what are those tracking numbers, and so forth. And it creates a real central database for everyone, not only with full transparency, but the averages work out to a certain percentage on average per project. So they feel like they know the overall costs in general going in, but it really creates clarity for us and for the client. And even in projects that we're managing the full process for, the construction of it, and we're overseeing contractors and all of that, it allows for our clients to feel like they're paying us for what they need,
Mm.
rather than sometimes having upcharges in places that they don't feel like we deserve. I mean, how many times do we run into situations where like, well, you weren't on site when that electrician showed up, and now I have this bill and you're going to make a percentage of that? That happens all the time. And so this really streamlines it for the client, and our averages still come out exactly where we'd want them to be percentage wise, but it makes it really straightforward. And while there is more documentation, it allows us to rest assured and the client to rest assured that everyone's on the same page. Like, communication is key.
Right. Communication is big. It's 100%. So, a couple of questions in there. Um, in the billing of the hourly, I have to believe that you are upfront saying to somebody what the investment range you expect it to be, even though you're going to end up billing it hourly. Am I right with that? I mean, you have to. I can't just sign a contract with you and say, just sign up for $250 an hour, and at the end of it in 6 months, we'll see what it adds up to. Are you guesstimating it?
Yeah, so the short answer is yes, but I say the short answer because we have a range of services, and it's something I'm happy to get more into if it's of service to other designers. But we have consulting based design, we have e-design options, and then we have real management design, which is more your traditional. We're going to do the full design execution, oversee the contractors, and so forth. different packages have different levels of straightforwardness, right? And so consulting, for example, it might be a 10-hour project, and we're going to cap that, and they have a budget, and we know exactly how many edits we can do to the design in order to stay within that framework so that they can feel really accessible around the design service they're getting and everyone's on the same page. When you're getting into management, just like you would construction costs, so someone who's percentage based on a managed project, there's going to be unforeseeable things, and that may make the costs go up. So no one can, even contractors are mostly time and material now because there's so many unforeseeable things. In those cases, there's often extra hours. We try to give them a big range, and really what average projects of that scale generally cost in design services. But we also want them to understand that every client needs a different level of hand-holding. And so some clients that make quick decisions, we get those numbers way down, and others that need edits over edits over edits, it's going to take more time. And so transparency and communication is key. And I think clients often feel empowered by knowing they have a handle on the costs a little bit by doing the hourly. At least that's what we've experienced, because they can say, we really need you to focus on the kitchen, right? We have these layers of the bathroom. We really would like your time spent on this. Or we have the site plan or the site visits established. We don't need you to come in as much. Versus they might need us all the time. They feel a little more in control of the design service and how they need it applied.
So that's interesting to me because my brain goes, how does the darn client know what they need or don't need? I mean, honestly, I'm being serious. Like, I'm in the middle of this big thing and I'm looking at the hours racking up and I'm like, I don't need you paying attention to the kitchen. I need you paying attention to that. But isn't there some point where you're like, I'm sorry, I'm over here paying attention to the kitchen because I know that's what it needs.
Well, I'll be very honest with you. When we have clients who sign up for our management services, we are very straightforward about what it takes to be part of that program. I believe in business, you're interviewing the client as much as they're interviewing you. And having that ownership of your service and what you do is a real important part of your validation. And then they trust you, right? You have to be interviewing one another. So the truth is, when we're dealing with design clients that we're doing full management, they don't want us to not be part of any part of the process. And of course they have us there. But when we're doing consulting and smaller things where they say, I'm doing this on a budget and I really need help with a kitchen, for example. And then they might say, if the budget comes in correctly, maybe I'll have assistance with the bathroom too, but it's usually not whole house design that happens with, because we're very transparent about the ins and outs of whole house design, and people have to know what those numbers look like in advance to see if they can afford it.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So
you know what I heard in there? I'm going to tell you what I heard in there because it's so funny, because I have a coaching program called Chairman of the Board. And it's a 1-year program, and there's different deliverables of it. And then I say, and you have unlimited access to me by Voxer. And the thing about it is, I used to say unlimited reasonable access because I didn't want any lunatics, messaging me 15 times a day, 7 days a week. And what I just heard in there is, when I have a conversation with somebody about Chairman of the Board, if they're a right fit, I know darn well the people who are going to drive me to drink. Like you already know it. And so, like you said, you're interviewing them as well as they're interviewing you. And so I appreciate that perspective, right? Because that's the stereotype of the client who's driving us crazy. But as you get more seasoned and you get more, you get a higher level of ability to say no when you should, then you're less likely to be in a conversation with clients who are hitting you with those types of things. Like you said, you're working with people who trust you, right?
Absolutely. And I think one of the things I learned, I started my first business when I was 19. And I think you have to really trust in your capabilities, because if you're not trusting in you, how is anyone else going to trust what you're capable of? And so having the vision and the belief that you are so capable, that you are, the greatest piece of this process. I mean, for real, of course, it doesn't mean you have it figured out. You need to make a lot of mistakes in order to figure out what works, but you have to be able to believe in yourself and think you can produce great value, because otherwise you can't.
Right.
And so I think really working on yourself in a lot of ways as the fundamental start of any business is like rule number 1.
Yeah.
And then you come at it with a perspective both that's positive and self-assured. again, not perfect, needs a lot of work and sculpting to become the business leader that you want to be. But at least you're giving that momentum to the process and people trust that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a really important part.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I'm a high-fiving you for sure. Now, another thing that you said in there that I wanted to go back to was you talked about everything's on spreadsheet. And you mentioned there's X amount of things that on spreadsheets that the clients have access to. And then you said you have a set of spreadsheets that they don't have access to. So what are some of the differences that appear on the two different spreadsheets?
So the internal facing spreadsheets often have notes and details related to vendors or perhaps a warehouse that we're using, which is housing all the furniture before we do a final install. It can have things that are internal for the team, and various logistics that just would bombard a client. And frankly, they don't want to know about, right? They want us to really handle a lot of those specific details so that they can have the smoother part of the process. Now, the things that they definitely want to know is they want to know what we're working on. They want to be able to reference back. When an invoice comes in, for example, it's really helpful for them to look through the whole process and to say, oh, they received an invoice on this day. They can't recall what happened or referencing certain emails or whatever it might be. So it's a framework of communication that's really helpful for us and often for the client. And then certainly around products, I think there's a bigger conversation around how people and when people share their vendors with their clients. But for us, regardless of if a vendor information is shared or not, the title of each item purchased is added to that spreadsheet along with the room that it belongs in and the current placement of where that item might be. So it might be in transit. It may have not been shipped yet. It might be located at the warehouse. It might have been delivered to our store. So there's a point of reference that we use internally, but clients really like to be in the know of that. They feel empowered by feeling like, oh, here's where my project is. This is where things are located. That tile has been shipped, whatever. So that's the product page. And then construction page is where any budgets or point of reference around costs that contractors might share with us, we're putting in that spreadsheet with the date that we received that information. So a client feels like they can reference that in knowing for their records. Because it happens all the time where you tell a client a cost or something that's happening and they don't recall.
Right.
And then there's this conversation of, I don't remember you saying that, or are you sure that's what the contractor built? And so it just keeps things really tight.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, first of all, I love the idea that, you said the link in there, it might say living room sofa, right? It's not saying, Cravat model XYZ, right? Like we don't need to do all of that. We just need to, but is it sitting in the warehouse or is it still waiting for fabric? The fabric is back ordered, something like that. So that makes perfect sense. I like that. And then as far as all of the quotes and the contracting stuff, you're talking about quotes of services that maybe you're facilitating getting those, but that money is not flowing through your office, like maybe, or is it both money that they're going to pay you and you're going to pay the contractor, or is it, get me in the weeds there.
So the truth is, over time, we have preferred that the clients pay the contractors directly because a lot of designers will collect the funds because they're having an added percentage in that and they almost pay themselves through that process before paying out the contractors or vendors. For us, we don't really want to be involved with the payouts to the contractors, even if they're the contractors that we prefer to work with and have the relationships with. And that is largely because there are so many things that happen with contractors and things go over budget or they take longer. And we really want to act as the liaison to the client and not the GC. And that's an important determination for us. We see ourselves much more as the owner's representation and design team rather than their GC. There are certain cases where we have a lot of clients who don't live locally and they do want our support in communicating or paying out the contractors. And so it doesn't always happen, but on occasion they need some assistance with that. And so when that happens, if we paid someone out or something, we would add it to that list.
Okay. But even in the situations where you're gathering the quotes but not paying out the contractor, it's there. It's like you said. So nobody can say, That's not what we budgeted. We didn't, that was, it's, like, wait, here's the date. We entered it into the document. You approved it, blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely. So it's actually two parts. And I do the same thing when I teach all my agents around how to create paper trail. It's a really important thing. I tell people, get off your text message, get on email,
Yeah.
and you follow up everything via paper trail. It is not because you don't trust people. It is because it makes you a more organized business owner.
Right.
And it lets everyone have reference, including yourself when you need it. So for
Right.
example, if I have a client call or a meeting with a client or a contractor, as soon as you are done, you go back to your desk and you say, that was a wonderful meeting today. Just to recap our conversation, boom, boom, boom. And you list it out.
Yep.
And it is a formula for your success because you're going to utilize that list to create your to-dos on Monday or wherever you execute. And it's going to let your client know what is happening.
Yeah.
And so I always say, get off the text. Everyone does that. They're texting updates or texting these things. That's fine. But then the end of that day should go through an email outlining it because everything gets lost in text.
Oh, it's so true. It's so true. And it's, look, one is more professional. Let's be serious, and the thing is, it's like the accountability works both ways and you want it to work both ways. You want, somebody to remember and understand what they agreed to. And that, for you too, like you're going to go looking through your text to say, what did you say was supposed to be the next time you were supposed to do something? Like that's insanity.
No way. We also like to do a Friday recap meeting that we send the client Friday emails. And even though everything's in the spreadsheet, it just lists, these are the things we've worked on this week. And then it actually outlines our to-dos, the most immediate to-dos that we will be working on as a team, and any to-dos we actually have for the client. And that might be, we still need the following questions answered. We still need your final decisions around this fabric, whatever it is. And on Fridays, it just keeps everyone in line, including the client, and it keeps us moving forward in preparation for the next week. And so it's a way of having a communicative workflow with our team and with the client.
Yeah. And I love the client to-dos, right? Because
yeah.
All of us have been in that situation where somebody's like, and where is the such and such? And you're like, right, the one that you never gave a deposit on or you never approved, that such and such. Yeah, it's nowhere. It's nowhere. That's where it is.
Exactly. And they need to know when there's a domino effect in design, right? Like we can't go to the next step until this step is sometimes complete. And so if something's waiting on the client rather than on our team, they need to know that we're waiting on them.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And what's so funny is it reminds me of this process of weekly statuses and like, here's the things that we did. Here's the things that we need you to do. Here's the things that we're planning to do. It reminds me of the process of good management and leadership with your employees, right? If you have a weekly meeting with an employee, when things go wrong, it's just another conversation in the schematic of your weekly conversations, as opposed to, I haven't sat down with you in forever and now something went wrong and now I've got to sit you down. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's like, that weekly, here's your to-dos, here's my, like as a consumer, I can see that I might be like, oh, the first week I've got to-dos, like, wait a second. And maybe I won't do them that week. But the second week, I'm like, oh, wait, and there's 3 more to-dos. Like, I'm going to sort of be like, oh, okay, sweetie. Like this project isn't happening around you. You've got to do some things in order for this to happen, right?
Exactly.
And so I think it's an outstanding way to run it. It's funny because it reminds me of Nicole Heimer of Glory and Brand. I talk about her all the time because she just impresses me every darn day of the week. And that's how she functions. She's like, okay, here's all the things I said I would do. Here's all the things you said you would do. And then like a couple days later, she's like, still waiting on your things. I'm like, yep, okay, we're working on it.
Exactly.
But she's always managing the project. And it always feels like we're in good hands, whatever we're doing. And that is the feeling that you want your design clients to have, like this big, massive project of building a home or renovating a home or even just designing one room. You want that feeling like, oh, the person that I'm giving my money to has got this. And that weekly update expresses that, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the amount of people that I've spoken to who love their house the way it turned out, but have nothing nice to say about the process because they were extremely stressed. Things took more time, over budget, whatever it is, and they feel a high level of anxiety when you actually bring up their design process. And I think that's a problem.
I agree.
I think that the industry needs to look at the way in which it is executed. There's a problem. There's a kink in the rope here. There's a problem happening. If the client isn't happy during the process, doesn't mean it's always going to be perfect.
Yeah.
But I think we also need to look at the way we contribute and deliver the news to our clients, because the reality is we're supposed to stomach a lot of the challenge, and we're supposed to soften some of that blow and keep our clients focused on where we need them to be. And so I think we need to look at ourselves both in our process and how we are holding space actually for the process and for the client in order for this flow to be better.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you're singing my tune all day long. I love it. So, do you have any particular things that stand out for you, Delyse, of, you had to have had conversations with colleagues throughout the years that are like, oh, that sounds like a good idea, but like, how do I get started? Like, just different tips or pointers, because obviously we can't hear in 45 minutes, here's your entire process to run a project. But what stands out for you?
Well, I think I should just also point out, like, it can be really scary to pick up and start something new, and it can be overwhelming, yet it can be very rewarding. And so stepping outside your comfort zone with the knowing that you can handle something is a really important key start to this. I launched our design company only 2.5 years ago, moving into 3. And we have gained incredible momentum in a very short period of time. We are opening a much bigger store and design studio with our real estate brokerage. That's over 4,000 square feet. And we moved there in just a couple months.
Wow.
And we're really, really blessed to have an incredible waiting list now for design. And it's a very small team. The design team's only 3 of us. And a lot of people ask me all the time, like, how did you do that? How did you build that momentum in such a short period of time and create a voice in an industry that you weren't actually in before? And I think going back to the process is everything. When I was selling real estate for many years, I found that creating a framework that was different from all my competitors was a really important part of my process. So we duplicated a lot of the infrastructure elements when launching design. And then, of course, the creative side has to be part of it. So, for example, we do leverage a lot of free outlets such as social media that really gets us out there, and having a vibrant website I think is really important to it, one that feels approachable and interactive for clients. And then we've actually created a way to sort of automate our first interactions with the general public. So let's say people find us on social media, or they come into our shop, or they know someone, they're going to go to our website, and it actually creates a little understanding of our design process right on our website. And then they have to have a call to action. I mean, that's a really important part, whether you're dealing with social media, website, you want to have a call to action. You want to stimulate a desire for someone and then have them be able to do something. So they click on a link, they have a brief questionnaire to fill out, and that's almost them saying, I want to take advantage of your services. So we then, their information, their budget, their location of the project, it all gets uploaded in a spreadsheet automatically. So now we have an immediate sense of organization, a record in our client base, in our network that we're building, and a way for us to really have understanding of what we're approaching before we now interact with the person. So we start with that process, and then from there, we usually jump on a call, we answer any questions about the process, and we learn a little bit more intimately what they're trying to accomplish. I really encourage people to create whatever their system is, to make it sort of streamlined and duplicatable for them. So I find that I say the same thing when I get on the phone with someone, not to be repetitive, but because it feels natural for me, right? So I get on the phone, it's like, I'm so excited to meet you. I look forward to learning more about your process and answering any questions you might have about ours. It's just a way to really set the call of what we're trying to accomplish there. So after that first call, from there, we send them a little more detailed information, of course, with our recap email. And if we think that it's going to be a good fit for them and for us, and we check our timeline and we make sure that works for them, our next step will be to establish them as a client, right? With our general terms and so forth, and going over the billing, the invoicing, the costs, and so forth. Jumping in a little more to our actual design process, we actually, when we open up our file, we find it really important I'm a very strong believer in when redesigning a home that it is as much about being the integrity of the architecture combined with the integrity of those people that live in there. And so when a house speaks around what its natural integrity might be and the people that are going to live there comfortably, we want to really understand those two things. And so we spend a little time opening their file, having them do Pinterest, having them share images of items that are important to them, what their personal styles are, perhaps, a little bit about their family history that they really want considered in the space. And so that's the information period. And then we sort of segue that into our design concept meeting, which is very fun. It's us creating visual concepts. And we do this through like a PowerPoint presentation, often on Zoom because a lot of our clients aren't local. And we'll walk them through a feeling around the space that we want to accomplish and see how they feel about it. And so a lot of that's very informational, all before we get now into like floor plans and the details of designing and the grunt work, let's call it, right?
Right.
And so once the designing part starts, that's when we're going to execute floor plans, contractors, materials, execution, all the way through install.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's great. I love it. And the thing is, it's like what we said earlier. Each of these things that you're doing, you've got different dominoes that are falling every time within your team. So a Pinterest board is created. Where is that stored? Things that are highlighted from the thing. These are like you maybe are pulling out for your team that this is really something we want to make sure we go back to or whatever it is, right?
Totally. And I think going back to the conversation about inward facing, all while you're doing these details on a client project, you're also building up your information library, not just your sample library, your information library. And that lets you be better for each file, right? So you're getting better at your protocol, you're better at your streamlining process, and you become more effective through that. So I think you have to constantly ask yourself, what can I do to make this more effective, both for me as the designer and for the client? And so you're always trying to tweak the formula.
Yeah. No, right. Always iterating, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. So you are doing hourly. Are you doing hourly from beginning to end? So it's hourly to actually create the design proposal, then it's hourly to manage the plumber and to receive the tile and all the things. It's just a complete logging of the hours all through the project from beginning to end.
It is. Yep. From the time the contract begins, which what we often do is we'll have this first initial call with them. We might do a brief sort of presentation of showing them digitally a little more of what our process looks like. But really by that point, we hope that they are making a decision, and so are we if we're the right fit. So it's usually only up to like an hour worth of time and communication before that decision is made for both of us. And from that point forward, everything would be billed hourly.
So in this time tracking that you're doing, do you have what's your methodology for it? Is it old school pen and paper? Is it an app that each of the people, yourself and the designers on your team, are using? How are you doing that, Delyse?
So we're really keeping it pretty straightforward with spreadsheets right now, which are then the consumer, the client is one of the signers onto the spreadsheet so that it's all on there. However, we are looking into some other softwares that will allow us to build out some more complex layers to it. And although we're not implementing anyone yet, it's just most important to us that we really have full communication with the team and really tracking what the work is and the time. So Slack is a great form of communication, and we use this between our different departments outside of design as well, for client for the things we're working on with the client, as well as for our time tracking.
Okay, cool. And then the other thing that I wanted to ask in there was the invoicing of the clients. So you're doing the hourly. We've established that. Do you invoice them once a week, once a month? How does that work?
So if we're doing consulting work, it really has a start and a finish. We have some consulting projects that we execute in 2 weeks. So we do a deposit up front for a certain amount of hours we anticipate it taking to complete the project, and then they pay a final bill at completion. When we're talking about projects that can go on for a year, long periods of time, we will often do biweekly billing, or monthly. And the reason I say or is because when a project is just starting and it might be early on while we're finishing up other projects, we're not going to bill them right away. The bill it's just beginning to develop and we want to get a little further in the project. So at that time, it will likely be once a month. But once we're getting closer to install day and our final reveal process, we're going to be billing biweekly because there's heavy ordering, heavy detail coordination, and the bills will add up pretty quick.
Yes. And do you let them know that in the beginning that, the first X amount of, time, expect monthly, and then we're going to switch over? You don't surprise them with it, in other words.
Absolutely. Again, laying out as much upfront in the communication of what a client can expect is very important. And even though you're outlining in the beginning of a client communication process what to expect, they need to be reminded. So you almost go through a phase 1, which is really about opening the file and dreaming about the process. Phase 2 is designing. Phase 3 is install execution. And every time it's switching over, they need to be reminded, this is what you can expect. These are potential hurdles that we're going to take care of, so you don't have to worry about it, as best we can at least. And this is what you have to look forward to. They need that hand holding. They don't know. A lot of people might only hire a designer once in their life. This might be the only time. They've never done it before. They need you to be the leader of that ship and execute how it's going to happen, relay that to them, and then fulfill the responsibility of doing it smoothly.
Yeah, no, I love it. You're talking my language, Delyse. You're talking my language. It's so true. It's the thing is, I think the further we go, I think every consumer appreciates when the person that they hire leads the ship, as you said. What I know is the further you go up the ladder of luxury, the more they expect it, and the more there is. Like for me, I say all the time, if anybody works for Netflix, the show that I actually want to do is Epic Customer Service Fails. This is the show that I am born to do. It will be a rant show. I will be full on Luann mode in the show. But when I tell you, walking around in my day-to-day life, it is very unusual for me not to witness an epic customer service fail. And the thing about it is what I mean to say is, the more savvy your consumer is, the more elevated the luxury experience should be, more elevated the luxury project and product is, the more that consumer is already 3 steps ahead of you on how you should have been doing it. Like, I'm literally constantly going, that's not what you should be doing right now. Like, you should be doing this right now. Now, you then translate that to an interior design project where I have no idea what you should be doing, but I have a sense that you're not leading me in doing it. Well, that's a game changer. That is a non-negotiable. And what are we doing in this? If we're both wondering what the next step is, what are you here for?
Well, you're absolutely right. And here's one thing they do know. They know how it makes them feel.
That's
so
right.
if it feels like the whole process,
Exactly.
I mean, that's not a good sign. That's not a good sign. And here's the other thing, and I say this to my agents on the brokerage side too. It's like every industry is being crushed and pressured by being duplicated through an algorithm, right? Like technology is growing. And if you are not producing real value to your client, you don't have a future in that industry. And that doesn't mean that your service you're creating doesn't have options on the digital world, but you certainly need to be giving them care and customer service, because that they're not getting from the computer. And that is something you can control. And then on top of that, we get a lot of questions around luxury, because I think a lot of people feel design is a very inaccessible thing. And there's a lot of designers really trying to change that, and some that are not. And that's fine wherever you are in the process. But I think luxury doesn't have to be based on a number. Luxury can be based on the experience that someone gets. And at the end of the day, when you walk into a store, for example, what determines you coming back is how you felt when you walked out, not the thing you purchased. And the same thing's going to hold true as you're building your business and your network. The design of the space could be beautiful, but if your client doesn't walk away feeling like they would recommend you to someone else, you have not fulfilled your responsibility as a business owner to really establish something that has longevity.
I know. I love
you
it.
know?
I'm like, yes, high
So
five.
it's just so, but I think the thing is, it's just a real opportunity. Getting to establish a really strong workflow that is organized and precise. Come up with your list of 5 things. I'm going to, you know, once I obtain a client, I'm going to upload their information in my organized fashion. I'm going to add them to my mailing list. I'm going to communicate my process, and then I'm going to execute my process, whatever it might be. You find that workflow and that framework. And on top of that, have your follow-ups, have your execution, and then have your ways that you're going to show up as a business owner to be professional. In addition to the creative, people hire you because they know you're creative. They like your point of view, but they need to now feel that you can execute it in a really professional way. And that's a wonderful thing. When you step up and you do that, you stand out in your industry. You are doing something that not everyone can do. And as a result of that, you will be more successful. It's a really
100%.
wonderful opportunity.
Yeah. Oh no. It's the ball is in our hands. The
Yeah,
ball is in our hands. I mean, if you are not a busy working interior designer, one of the first things you have to do is look in the mirror because there's something disconnected there. It could be, as you're talking about, that you're delivering a good product, but you're not delivering a good experience, in which case you're not getting referrals. It could be that you're doing a pretty good job of both of those things, but you're not conveying that in your marketing and your branding, so people don't get it, right?
exactly.
But the thing is, there's enough work for everybody, period, and a discussion. Like that's what I'm telling you. In 4 decades in business, you can always find a consumer to buy the crap that you sell as long as you do a good job doing it.
It's so true. I know. I always say that. Like, there's enough to go around. There is so much there. And so the only thing you can control is you. And what are
Yes.
you giving to it? And how are you bettering yourself through it? And get excited about that process because your
Mm,
clients will love it and you will be more fulfilled in your work for
yeah.
sure.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
That seems like such a great place to end it. I love that line. Get excited about that process, right? Get excited
yeah,
about the possibility that it is in your hands to create this and that you're the one who can fashion it and be the master of your domain in it, right? Get excited about it. I love it.
totally.
That's awesome.
100%.
Oh my goodness. Well, you and I are cut from the same cloth. That's all I can tell you. So
Thank
I
you.
I appreciate your perspectives. I appreciate all of the things that you shared today. It's been awesome getting to know you, Delyse.
Thank you. Thank you. Likewise, I really appreciate coming on.
Delyse has built incredible momentum in just 3 years. How she built that momentum? It goes exactly back to her processes, right? Process, systems, and execution have many layers, but there are a couple of tips Delyse offered, and they all have one thing in common. For her, it's the use of spreadsheets. When you visit Upside Down's website, you are met with a questionnaire that is immediately sent to a spreadsheet. The organization and record keeping of spreadsheets are there from the very first contact with each potential client. They are set up for success before the project even starts, before they've even accepted the client, right? If you remember not too long ago, I had April Gandy on the show, who is also a huge advocate of having spreadsheets and spreadsheets that are open to clients. She provides a simple Google Doc template for her clients so they know what to expect. It's an organized outline, but also a visual tool to refer to when they have questions. This is just like Delyse, right? It shows them that you know what you're doing, which then begins to build that trust. So listen to that show with April if you missed it. We'll link it in the show notes. So Delyse, like April, includes her clients every step of the way. And by the way, both of these ladies mentioned that by sharing quote unquote everything, we mean everything relevant to the clients as part of the project. Right? Delyse has her own spreadsheets for the back of house stuff filled with the detailed notes, the warehouse information, all of the interaction between the team and the things that the clients don't need to know, but her team does. Okay. What she said is by doing this, it ensures that her clients are informed, but not overwhelmed, right? They don't need to be in the weeds of every blasted detail that it takes to get their project done, right? What I love is that Delyse says that she gives them enough so the clients feel empowered and feel like they have some control, but it is actually still Delyse who is in complete control. She is the leader of the project, no question about it. And what else is great about keeping documents like spreadsheets is that you can track everything and have that paper trail. As Delyse said, it's not there because she said you don't trust someone else on your team or the client. It's there for organization, plain and simple, so that you can check and cross-check, right? And the thing is, you never know when something like this, having these detailed records, is going to save your butt. I can't help but think about the recent conversation I had here with Heather Vitti Pruitt, where she ended up being taken to small claims court by a client, but she won. She won because she had dozens of organized documents that she created and she kept throughout the process. And when the time came, she was well prepared and able to present them in court, validating her contentions in the case. It's a powerful thing to do. So we will link that in the show notes as well in case you missed that episode. Now, if you want great execution with your projects like Delyse, start organizing your projects with specificity and clarity. You might use spreadsheets like Delyse and April, and maybe, like many other designers, you will use My Doma Studio. My Doma Studio also has this front of house and back of house feature where all the details, invoices, measurements, communications, and selections are all housed in the one platform. And you decide what you click on and that is available to your clients to see, and what you keep clicked that is only available for the team to see. The point is, with My Doma Studio, it's all in one place, right? Easy to work from, easy to access, easy to keep projects documented. So I encourage you to go to mydomastudio.com/a well-designed business to learn more. Okay. So the thing is, however you do it well, do it with clarity for both your team and your clients. And remember what Delyse said, trust yourself, because that's the first step in others trusting you. Think about that. Often we resist the clarity of putting the process in front of the client because there's a little part of us that isn't sure we're doing it the right way, the same way every time. And that's because we don't have it documented. Think about it. When you're a little nervous, if they're going to catch you in an error or a mistake, that's when we hold back. But it's taking this next step and owning it and understanding when you document your repeatable, duplicatable processes. And then you separate what's client-facing, what's team-facing. Now you wake up every day and the world is right. Things feel good. Clients know what's going on. The team knows what's going on. You know what's going on. This is what you're going for, okay? All righty. Well, Delyse, thank you so much for talking to us about your business and inspiring us to be more organized. It was my pleasure learning about you and how you do things. And I hope you guys enjoyed it too. And I hope it inspired you to take some action to get your documents in a row, lined up, and organized so that at a touch of a button, you know what you're doing and when you're doing it. All right? Decide to be excellent. Thank you for joining me today. This podcast is a production of Luann Nigara, Inc. If you want to know more about me, my books, or Luann University, go to luannnigara.com. And if you are interested in having WindowWorks help you with your next window treatment or awning project in the New York, New Jersey metro area, go to windowworksnj.com to learn more. Have an excellent day.